So there's only a couple of things that Kirby Smart has not been super pumped up about with his team. And one of them is punt return. And when you look at Georgia's punt return, here's what Kirby actually had to say. He said, "Yeah, that unit's been a disappointment. We haven't done what we needed to do. We haven't held up as we have had in the past." Last week's game, talking about the Charleston Southern game, where they did have a lot of very easy returns, honestly, because the punts were too low. Last week's game was not a great measure of that. So I'd love to tell you where we're going in the right that we're going in the right direction, but those guys were overmatched, which they were. And you look at Kirby and them obviously they deal with their own statistical analysis of stuff, and that's the way it should be. And the stuff that is released and tracked by the NCAA, one of the few things that Georgia is not good at are just returns, generally speaking. The kickoff return, I got an answer for that. They just don't return a lot of kickoffs. Okay, for whatever reason, they don't allow a lot of scores, but they force a lot of punts, and they're not getting what they need in the punt return game. I mean, that's just all there is to it. We've not seen an explosive run, an explosive return, I should say. But in what the NCAA tracks, punt return is only this. It's one of the worst things at 9 yards a return. They just haven't had an explosive run yet. I think they've had maybe one touchdown this season, something like that. But you've got Kearis Jackson back there. I mean, he's one of the most explosive and best players. Well, he's one of the most explosive players in college football. We've seen this for a while. That guy can go, but it's not there. And when you compare them to who they're sort of peers, I mean, Alabama's not been great either on this front. But I think it's hard to know sort of why. You're not facing a great punter every single week. Usually it's that your unit is good and they're good at returning. You would think this would be a pretty good unit because they have a very good returner in Kieris, and then Lab McConkey gets in there when Kieris is not back there, I feel like. And the reason why I said you feel like they'd be pretty good is there's a lot of really good players on this team that don't play regular downs. So when you've got guys like Xavier Sori, Smile Munden, Dumas Johnson, Chaz Chambliss, you know, gifted athletic guys that can sprint down and do what they're supposed to do. It's not working right now. And I mean, I'm certainly not a punt return expert, but it's something that I feel like should be better just because of the overall skill on the team, the skill level on the team. And like for instance, Georgia is more gifted than Tennessee. Well, I don't know if we saw a punt return against Tennessee now that I think about it. And that happens, but that doesn't go necessarily against your average. If you don't fair catch it and you get a rolling ball, then of course that kills an average. But when is Georgia going to pop a 30-yard return? When is Georgia going to pop a 40-yard return? I remember the Clemson game, and that Clemson punter who's like drawing Social Security has been there so long. He actually had a really good game punting, but Jake Camarda did too. So that game I remember. I don't know that I recall any other really sort of great um, moments this season on punt return. It's just not been great. So I don't know. I mean, the punt game, it's not been great. I think Jake Camarda's had a decent season for sure. I think he's been relatively consistent. And obviously, in order to be in the league, he's going to have to be consistent all the time. So that will be his challenge. But I don't think that he's had a bad year by any stretch. I think there's been times when he has changed the game. And there's going to be times in the future where guys like Jake Camarda and Kieris on this punt team, this is how you make memories. This is how you win championships because of depth. The depth spills over to the special teams because guys like N'Kobe, he's playing special teams. He's not just playing defense. Well, you have an All-American candidate out there against guys who are lower level SEC players. Over time, the higher level players should win. That's not what we've necessarily seen in punt return. Maybe they're calling a fair amount of punt safe. But it's what Kirby said that folks should be, paying attention to, which is that he has not been happy with the way that they performed. Uh, that unit's been a disappointment. What we haven't done, we haven't done what we needed to do. We haven't held up as well as we have in the past. Last week's game was not a great measure, and he's right about that. I mean, there's no doubt that he's right about that. And a season ago, this Georgia team, in the punt game, had fewer. So maybe this is, they had fewer yards, 7.29. Maybe this is we don't have Mecole Hardman anymore situation. Punt return I mean, for the 19 season, they were 29th in the country at 11 per return. And then, of course, I mean, this is back now. I'm getting to the part where, Mecole was there. They were number 7 in the country, 16.64, and that was Tyler Simmons and Mecole. Certainly Mecole is a dangerous situation. Maybe you stick George back there at some point. In 2017, George was 31 with 10 a game. 10 per return. So, it's an important thing. You need to be prepared for every aspect of a college football game. And punt return can make or break you. I mean, think about the Notre Dame game in 19, a drop punt right there. That's the only reason Notre Dame scored a touchdown. Excuse me. Think about the Auburn game in 2017 on the Plains. Mecole Hardman with a mistake there. Huge momentum. Basically buries Georgia for the rest of the day. The Tennessee game in 2001 with Damian Gary making that return for a touchdown. Mark Richt's teams at the beginning of things were outstanding in 2001, 2002, and even a little bit beyond that. So in special teams, that really propelled them with all of those plays. This team is a gifted enough team that they should be better at punt return. They just should. And we've seen punt blocks here a few times, Nolan Smith. Excuse me. We've seen some really great plays on special teams, punt blocks, field goal blocks, extra points block. But this has been the one spot where they really haven't been unbelievable. I think Kirby's right about that. And he basically calls it like he sees it. He doesn't just make stuff up. When you look at the grand scheme of things, I mean, the passing offense is 62 in the country, so not unreal. Turnover margins, 50th, not unreal. I mean, there's plenty of stuff. But punt returns is something that you see a lot. Like, you're not always in a fourth down defense, I mean, that happens a lot, actually, for Georgia. And maybe that's what's skewing the numbers. Guys are going for it on 4th and 2 in the third quarter because they're down 20 points. But I think that's one thing to monitor here. This is an important time of the season. If you can get right against the Jackets and send it on into Atlanta and beyond, that would make a big difference for Georgia as they get prepared for the college football playoff and the SEC championship that's right before them. We'll see you over the website, dogpost.com. Thanks for watching. See you there.